Fred had just broken down all things Knicks when it comes to this trade. I'm very curious to get your perspective, I guess 10 days out roughly, about what it means and how it works for the Raptors, and then obviously where they're going. But quick color on my side, I mentioned to Fred catching up with Bobby Webster a little bit in LA, and he, like Fred, had used the phrase win-win for the trade. RJ Barrett's obviously playing pretty well, Quickley doing good things, but they got a lot more decisions to make. I guess I'll start with this. Just, what was your reaction to the deal at the time, and how do you feel like it has worked for that squad so far?
Yeah, my reaction at the time was just, this is a Raptors team that needed a change. Like literally the night of that trade, they lost to the Pistons. And if not for that loss, the Pistons would be on a 34-game losing streak right now. It would be the biggest story in sports. But yeah, the Raptors needed a change. The group just wasn't really clicking. Offensively, it's been a drag to see the Raptors play for the last pretty much 3 years. They've been getting by, grinding results with Nick Nurse and playing a frenetic style. But it wasn't sustainable. It was like 40 minutes a night for their top guys, and they weren't even, there was no chance really to even get to past the first round, for example, with that group. So a change needed to be made. And they brought in 2 players who offensively have been a much better fit. I know that RJ in New York wasn't super efficient, took a lot of contested shots, and just overall wasn't a great fit. But I think coming to Toronto, it's really refreshed things. Both him and Quickley have talked about it's a different system. They move the ball a lot better in Toronto. And whatever, obviously New York is more successful as a team, but it's just a different style of play. And both guys have hit the ground running. If anything, RJ, even though the deal was centered and largely hyped around Immanuel Quickley, RJ is the guy who's actually hit the ground running first. And he's had just a number of really efficient, but just awesome kind of like complete performances. And for him, it's really just about, almost as being like a third, fourth option with the Raptors right now. There's a lot of good ball movement, and he's just attacking off of catches. He's not shooting mid-rangers nearly as much. He's obviously on a hot streak from 3, but he's finding ways to contribute. And I think overall for the Raptors, they needed 2 more guys in the starting lineup who can create some more offense. All of a sudden, when they're healthy, they now have 4 guys who can attack and create. So it's created for a better offense. It just hasn't translated to wins yet because they've had a terrible road trip right now of like playing the 2 games in LA, which is never easy. And even the game they lost to the Kings hit 21 threes. So, but in general, the team just looks a lot more cohesive. Defensively, there's a lot to figure out though. You lose OG, you lose a lot of your defense.
I'm curious to know on the Quickley front. I mean, the vibe in New York was always, if he gets to another situation, he's blocked by Jalen Brunson. If he gets to another situation, he's going to find a way to break out. If he gets an opportunity to start, he's going to break out. He's had some really good moments so far. I actually still think he has another gear from what he's shown so far in Toronto. What are the first impressions on him so far, especially as a guy kind of at the top of your offense, running an offense, not just as a scorer, because that's a different role for him than what he was in before, right?
Yeah, totally. There was a game recently where Quickley had like 10 assists, and I don't think he cracked 10 points. And I think the scouting report coming in from him was he was going to be a combo guard. He's going to score a lot. But I think he is relishing the new role of, being the starting point guard, having to set up other scorers on the team. And he's kind of finding spots to fit in. Weirdly enough, right now, he's not finishing strong at the basket. He's looked more and more comfortable just in general, but I think there is still more to be done for him to get to the rim a little bit more. But the 3-point shooting, both on and off the ball, has been something that the Raptors have really missed. You lose Fred VanVleet in the offseason as well. You bring in Dennis Schroeder, who has his own skill set, but it's not, pull-up shooting. It's not off-ball shooting. Quickley has come in and slotted in more comfortably when he's playing off the ball, I feel like. But yeah, I agree with you. There is sort of, this sense that he can give even more because you've seen him flash both sides. One side of it being more of the floor general and the other side of it being more of an off-ball kind of scorer. And you saw last night, I mean, when the Raptors were down against the Clippers in the fourth quarter, and I mean, they're obviously humming. and it's Kawhi and it's Paul George and it's James Harden, somebody's got to score for you. Like someone's got to take over. And it was Quickley's first time in the fourth quarter last night taking over and scoring 10 points in the fourth quarter for the Raptors. That wasn't enough to get the win, but I thought Quickley really asserted himself and found a good balance last night. So yeah, I mean, there is definitely a starting potential there. It's just getting comfortable to that role.
William, let me shift it a little bit to the kind of the dude who's front and center right now. Pascal Siakam pregame against the Lakers. I love this because it was one of the more colorful kind of pregame scenes that I've seen in a while, where he's doing his thing, and he got a long workout, man. He was out there for a while, and you got agents, front office folks, media members, sideline, just absolutely jam-packed at Crypto.com Arena watching Pascal. It wasn't quite on the Steph Curry levels when he goes out and does his thing and everybody wants to watch, but it felt very strange because everybody, or at least it felt this way, courtside was talking about Pascal. I think he had the earbuds in, so I don't think he was eavesdropping, but it was just a hilarious vibe because you're watching this guy do his thing, and then everyone wants to know where is this heading? What is going to happen? It's a pretty, for me, even a pretty unique dynamic when you talk about a guy who is making it clear and his associates that, the talks with the Raptors, at least on their side would prefer they continue, that the extension is something that they, financially, economically, and has not asked out, that pathway remains open. Then you've got a trade market where, I think Masai Ujiri is looking at this like, how can I obviously juice it up and not have it be as underwhelming as it appears to have been. The Kings certainly engaged pretty seriously last week. Indiana gets mentioned, Golden State, a bunch of teams. But you're a lot more close to it. What do you think here in terms of where this is headed for Pascal?
My personal sense of it is that if they wanted to extend Pascal, they would have done it already. They've had ample opportunity. Even if they wanted to extend Pascal to preserve the value of Pascal in a potential trade.
That's it right there, by the way. That's the only inference I was making. That's the only reasoning for them to do it.
No, I mean, they would have done that last summer because then all of a sudden you would have guarantees on his deal. He'd be under contract if they extended him last year around the time of the draft. Then he would be available to trade by this trade deadline. And, if you're trying to deal with a team, like Indiana or Detroit, who probably don't have assurances from Pascal's side that if we get traded here, we'll extend with this organization, you take that off the table if you've already extended him last summer. So right. I think for the team, like, they're trying to see what they can get value wise. Maybe they can go back after all this and try to put all the cans back in the worm, or the worms back in the can, and just say, like, yeah, you know what, Pascal, we tried to trade you, but there weren't any good deals out there. How about an extension? It's not exactly a great proposal at that point, but still, I do think that there's a genuine interest for Pascal to remain in Toronto. I think he's been bought into the new coach. He wants to fit in with the new group. And I think after a slow start to the season, his game is rounding back into form. He's shooting the three a lot better as well. And he's been a pretty prolific one-on-one scorer who can also set up other guys when he draws extra attention in the post. But yeah, I mean, it has been a surreal road trip for him. I mean, every single team he lands in, whether it's Sacramento, there was a flurry of reporting around, oh my God, Masai is talking to Alvin Gentry. Is there something happening right there? And of course, that was short-lived, and it seems like, Sacramento may not want to pay 3 max guys. And then they go to Golden State the next night, and you see a lot of reporting with Pascal and Golden State. And then even going to LA, I mean, I don't think he's linked to either of those teams, but still just being in the media capital where most of the agents are, it's like, of course, it would be the surreal scene. But yeah, from my understanding of the situation, it's just Pascal remains committed to wanting to stay in Toronto. And I don't think that those assurances will be given to teams looking to trade for him, that he will commit to those situations. Maybe when talks get more and more serious and we're closer to the trade deadline, they can sort of confront that. But at least of my knowledge right now, that hasn't been done. Like, other teams haven't come to them and said, like, will you trade for us? And will you sign here if you trade for me? So yeah, until I guess that barrier's reached, I think that, they're just going to continue fielding offers.
So I got a Siakam question.
Yeah.
What's the ideal fit for Siakam? So Anunoby gets traded, and part of the reason there's so much noise around OG Anunoby I feel like since 1976, Although when you account for the exchange rate, it's like 1982. But
very good.
But part of the reason, you've definitely never heard that joke. But
No.
so since part of the reason there's so much noise around Anunoby is because he's a wonderful off-ball player. He's automatic in the corners. He guards every position. He's one of the best players, the absolute top tier best players in the league. You put on your team and you're going to change something about either your offense or defense because they're so good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like you get Jokic and you're going to change your offense because you have Nikola Jokic. Like you're going to play differently around him. And Anunoby, and then there are guys who are either bad or have a bad trait on one side of the ball. You have to change things about your offense or defense to accommodate that. And Anunoby's one of the best players in the league who you can drop onto any team in the league and you don't have to change anything with your offensive or defensive ecosystem in order to fit him. And he's going to make you better on both sides. And that's part of the reason why a midseason trade for him always made a ton of sense for me and why I felt like a lot of teams could have justified trying to go after him. Indiana could justify going after him. The Kings could have justified going after him. A million other teams could have justified going after him. Siakam in a vacuum is a better player, but he's also not as accommodatable of a player, right? Especially as a shooter, where the 3-point shot is like the last 4 years now. He's like a 32% 3-point shooter. And he is a little bit more of a ball dominant guy than OG. What do you look at? It's different when you come in the offseason, you have a training camp to get an offense together, to get a defense together, to get acclimated with your teammates, to figure out how it's all going to work. It's different when it comes in the middle of the season. What do you see as the ideal fit for him, let's say in a world where we know he's not in Toronto this year?
I mean, I think what I'm going to push back on is I don't think he needs to be the number one option to be effective. Last time we've seen Pascal Siakam as a number two option, the Raptors won the championship in 2019. And that's not to give Pascal the headline credit there. Obviously, that was Kawhi, and the rest of the team was really good as well. But Pascal was really good on number two role. I think that there's a lot of focus on the three-point shooting, and that's fair. That is typically how players who don't have the ball contribute. But Pascal is a pretty well-rounded player. I mean, he's a strong rebounder. When he's locked in defensively, he has a really, really good gear there. I would say he's a stronger on-ball defender than off-ball defender, especially right now. But, you know, when it comes time to it, I've seen him defend at a high level in the playoffs multiple times. And then, yeah, in terms of his scoring, it depends on what kind of team you need. I mean, I think that if you're looking to find more balance, especially somebody who can score on the block, who can generate his own offense, you know, I'm thinking about, I mean, ideally he plays alongside a stretch five. So teams that have a stretch five could really use Pascal as a four. And it just balances out, you know, how much creating you can get from, you know, your secondary star. I mean, I think for Pascal, like it would be a bit of a different, like I agree with you that it's not as seamless as bringing in OG and he's plug and play 3 and D. You don't have to worry about him. He's going to put him on your opposing team's best player and he's going to shut him down. It's not like that. But at the same time, I think he raises your ceiling if you are a team right now that has like one star, but you know, you get to the playoffs and they really lock in on that guy. Who else can generate offense for you? Those are the type of teams that should be looking at Pascal because all of a sudden you bring a lot more balance to your group.
See, this is why I keep coming back to the Pacers.
Exactly.
You got about them, yeah.
You got your stretch five, Miles Turner. He brings them some more defense. Lord knows they could use anybody to defend. He can play in a high pace. He's good in transition, good cutter. Like it just makes a ton of sense. He gives them length. He gives them another reliable option to create a shot other than Halliburton. If Halliburton is, you know, shut down in a playoff series or quintuple teamed or something on any given play, which really might happen at some point soon.
Yeah.
And the Pacers, by the way, have had interest in Siakam for a long time. Like before they traded Sabonis, there were some Sabonis Siakam discussions there too. Like that dates back a while, this Pacers front office being interested in Siakam. So that's one that I'm like, okay, that could be a great
Well, let
fit.
me dovetail from that, guys. Since I'm the guy who's based near Sacramento, you've got this, you know, subplot where obviously Domas goes to the Kings. You know, all those years that we saw Domas next to Miles Turner and some of the complications that came with that pairing. You know, how, if it went the other way, would you feel about Pascal and this Kings offense where it's so much, you know, high ball action with Domas and the guards coming off the cuts and Pascal having to find his way within that? What would you think about that fit?
I don't think it's as clean as it is in Indiana. I don't. I think one thing that you would really want to see from Pascal is, look, it's fine if you're not the strongest off-ball shooter. Like, he's totally fine if you put him in the corners and things like that. It's just not the best way to use him. But then you probably need to be really, really good at cutting or really, really good at screening to create space for other people off the ball. There's other ways to play off ball. It's not just catching and shooting from three. And I don't think that, and he would probably take up similar spaces to Sabonis. I do think that he would boost their transition game. There's no doubt. In a half-court setting, you can give the ball to Pascal, and he could score and generate a good shot for you. There's a lot of other shooting around, the Kings, but yeah, I think what's difficult there is just finding value for the Raptors that doesn't really include Keegan Murray. Like I just, I'm looking at the rest of the Kings roster, and you can maybe cobble together something with like Davion Mitchell. I mean, the Raptors already have Quickley now, so you're at best trading for a backup point guard for you. Herter, who's had a kind of up and down kind of year, and then maybe some picks. It just doesn't seem like that clean of a fit. Plus, on court, I do think that it's not as easy to fit him into Sacramento, but totally agree. Indiana seems like the spot. I mean, I think Toronto would like a lot of players from their side. Like you throw in a Jarris Walker. I don't know if they want to throw in, Buddy Hield. You're starting with something there. Andrew Nemhart's I guess I just mentioned that they don't need another point guard, but he can play 2-guard. He's Canadian,
Yeah,
so.
the Buddy one's interesting because let's not forget the way the season started. Buddy was sending the bad signal up that he wanted out of town, and obviously things have gone better than he probably thought, and he's played well and fit in well. But we'll see what happens on the Kings front. And I wrote about this yesterday. They now have to face the even more complicated dynamic of knowing that Pascal's not real excited about the prospect of going to Sacramento. That's going to have a ripple effect on what they're willing to put on the table, obviously, because it seems very clear that it's a rental situation, with no long-term future being probable, if you will. So we shall see. William, thank you for coming on the show, brother.
Just let the Pistons offer everything.
Oh,
Pistons offer everything.
That's how we're gonna do
wins.
That's how we're gonna do the last champion for the Raptors from 2019. Our last piece. Enjoy Detroit,
Come
buddy.
on, Masai. Don't do that to him. Don't do that to him, Masai.
He'll get him their 5th win. They'll build a statue.
Oh my Lord. You guys, are we really gonna have James Wiseman, Marvin Bagley, and Pascal Siakam going to where big men go to die? Let's not do this. We cannot do this.